a long time ago, but let him become a fool, that he may be. For the wisdom of this world, foolishness without Father. There is wisdom of this world, it does exist, but it's foolishness without Father, and as we've seen with all these speakers today, our Father's will is important. And there's two ways that we can do that. Two simple ways. Wish I would have followed these ways a long time ago. The simplest way possible is to just let God be true and every man a liar. A really challenging way is just to prove all things. And if you know that God is true and every man's a liar. But how does someone go about losing the wisdom of this world? It comes in different forms. For me, it came from a constant reminder. I'm surrounded by the wisdom of the world every day when I go to work. I teach science. And the message I teach, I have to really be careful what I say because I don't want to alter the Father's truth in any way when I speak to children, ever. And so it's a great job that I have. A lot of people say, how can you teach a job that you disagree with what they teach? Well, I teach it a little differently, and I go by the standards either way. I examine the evidence. But what brought me here, how I lost the wisdom of this world, was not the easy way, not letting the Father be true and every man a liar. It took me some constant reminders. I don't know if you can see these verses. I was thinking about what I did to lose that wisdom, and it wasn't really anything I did. The Father swept in and showed me that His words are true and every man's a liar. And I was compiling some verses that have to do with mercy. I went to Bible Gateway and typed in the word mercy, and I feel like there's a pattern He's trying to show us throughout the entire Bible. This is Old Testament all the way into the New Testament. I'll keep going. I had to go on to another slide, but His mercy endures forever. I wasn't trying to make a cross or anything like that. That's just kind of how it came out. But His mercy endures forever. And the way I found that out is I had the world. I was leaning on the world for my happiness and my joy. If people liked me, if I was a successful competitor, I had a marriage around the corner. I put all my joy and happiness, and by accident, sometimes we do that, we put Father second. And that's what I had done. And when I found myself crying my eyes out, pity party, because I lost everything, and I was wanting to end it all, because it was that horrible pain where you just think, man, I can't take anymore, even though really looking back at what the Messiah went through, it was nothing what I had lost. But I had lost this world, and the Father did something that blew me away with His mercy. He healed my broken heart when I cried out to Him. For the first time in years, I cried out to Him. I said, I've had too much, I just can't take anymore, I need You, and I trust You. And when I said, I trust You, boom, like lightning, filled me with the Holy Spirit, healed my broken heart, and showed me why I hurt, and it changed everything instantly. I did not deserve it. It wasn't about me. It was about our Father. He set me free, and He revealed that pattern that the Word has, that this world tries to hide from us, is true, and there are some liars out there that try to spread false rumors about my Father. His mercy endures forever. He loves you.
Yes.
Okay? This love and this miracle that changed my life stuck with me. When I got into teaching, started out as a special ed teacher, and I was working in science classrooms, and I just found an obsession with the complexity of our Father's creation. You guys, yourselves, microscopic stuff that you cannot see, okay? The stuff that we have to use animations to see. Why do we need animations? Because it is that complex. Our Creator has done something so masterfully, we have to make cartoons to display what we think is happening. That's how powerful and amazing our Father is, His creation. But there was one giant elephant in the room. Evolution. And we pretty much believe anything we see pictures. I made this picture, by the way. Actually, I took this picture off the internet. Photoshop and cartoons have helped false ideas spread for a long time. And this year, the Birdogosaurus, we would believe it if it was in textbooks. Okay, most of the children some transitional time. But my research, because I wanted to prove all things, I knew that this Big Bang, this whole narrative we were given, was a lie from the evil ones. But my brother one day said, hey, have you ever, because it's on my heart, I didn't really get too deep in it yet, but my brother said, did you ever see these embryo drawings that we looked at when we were younger in school, and how it made all these different organisms, a bird, a turtle, a fish, a salamander, a human, they all look the same. And if you look at the very top row up there, that's what this guy, Ernst Haeckel, drew over 100 years ago. And they were proven fraudulent. He said, did you know they were proven fraud? I said, no, they were in a textbook. I assumed this guy did his homework, and now they're in science books today. But embryologists proved that this guy was a liar when they took pictures of these embryos in real life. And that guy got exposed. He was a little embarrassed, but they kept his works in the books. This guy had some other dangerous works that led to some major racial type of concepts. They had a young black man in a zoo with a monkey because he was alleged to be a missing link or something like that. And it was because he had drawings that supported that belief. Okay? And it created some dangerous things, some dangerous beliefs that were harmful to people and mankind, and still have an influence in the minds of our elders and some of our youth today, many of our youth. So the hoax is kind of that rabbit hole. I'm not going to get into that. You can do some digging for yourself and find out the foundation evolution is on is very faulty. It will fall away just like that. Okay? But while I was investigating that, more miracles happened. Surprise, surprise. I kind of lingered away from the Father, was in a deep slumber. There is an awakening. Most of you are a part of that. That's why you're here. But the Father had some more miracles in store that humbled me so much that I said, I know something is off. And I said these dangerous words. I said, show me the truth about creation. No matter how crazy it sounds, and I asked if it gives glory to you. I did not know what I was asking for, but I was at this point confident. He's listening to me. I said, I am ready. And of course, when you say you're ready and you're seeking, He gives you things. And I lost the wisdom of this world rather quickly after that. The Holy Spirit started showing me things that I would have never investigated with my worldly wisdom. My worldly wisdom said, that's too dumb, do not look at that. But the Father said, just look into it. And I started seeing patterns. The same patterns of fraud that I saw with evolution, I saw with what I lived on. Something that I thought was as true as the sky's blue. I did not see the mark that's in plain sight. You guys can see that. I kind of highlighted it for you.
Yep.
The evil one, almost, it's like they have to leave their mark where they go. So that people with eyes can say, oh, that's not the Father. The Father would put that there. That's interesting. But we have been deceived into believing our ancestors were really dumb. I believe that when I was in school, and I laughed. I said, wow, they think that both are just going to fall off the edge of this disc-shaped earth? That's stupid. And that is stupid, because none of our ancestors believed that. Okay? They believed the creation account from our Father as it is. And I'm going to go over that. But what does the wisdom of the world say that we are? The wisdom of this world says we're just a really good accident that happened, this explosion. We're that pale blue dot. Carl Sagan says that's home. Over, sink in. And they put us on something that is moving at speeds we have never felt, never seen, never proven. And these speeds, like I said, some of them bear the mark. But these speeds, I'm going to show you a little example of a fraction of these speeds. I can't show you these entire speeds because we couldn't see anything. It would be like me bringing a gun and going, guys, watch the bullet fly out of the gun. Okay? And now multiply times a few hundred. Here's speeds that you can actually see. I had to speed them up with my computer. We've watched objects fly around Mach 1, and that's what you're going to see right here. So a little visual to go this lesson. Let me fix the sound real quick. It might take a second. Let me see. I can do that. There you go. All right, we're back on. There you go. This is the slowest motion, and it seems to get the most attention. The rotation, it's about Mach 1. A few hundred miles per hour faster than that. Second fastest, 66600, the circle of the sun. This is 86 times faster than that jet. We're only going to show you 8 times faster. Ooh. 20 times faster. So, pretty fast. And if I said people that believed in the biblical model, I want you to believe that you're moving that fast on faith, it would take an extraordinary leap of faith to believe in that. Especially when they're looking at stars nowadays. We have technology that's amazing. We can do star trails. And these star trails make perfect circles. And if you imagine the things you just saw with the slowest speed being moving in spinning, which is what's making these star trails, your wheels start turning like, hey, something's not adding up. They've been telling me that we're moving hundreds of times faster than what we just saw because of a Big Bang. We've never tested it, experimented with it, tried to prove it. We believed it, and the animations were amazing. I'm not those cartoons were pretty good, but we have a chance of being tricked by people who have a background that we weren't taught about. There was a background of sun god worshiping that has upset our Father, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. I'm going to try to go through just look at these images and see a pattern, and that pattern you even have her trying to pretend to be something she's not. But inside of the Lady Liberty, there's an inscription. It says the New Colossus. If you don't know what that is, I didn't, but a subscriber told me, do you know what that means? And I said, no, I've never looked into that. They said it means it's a new version of the Greek sun god Helios. Didn't know that. And they had a big statue back in the day that looked a lot like that. And so we have the new Colossus here in America that snuck in. These things are sneaky. The enemy's not going to broadcast his plan in certain subtle ways, but be sneaky in other ways. Now, here is from the book of Exodus. It says, and in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. And along comes the Helios centric model of those gods. And then you have all of our planets, they are named after these gods. I wasn't taught that in school either. Earth is the only one that's not. Why? Because Earth is just dry land. That's what the Father called it. That's what I'm going to call it. Even the term solar system. I thought, there's an innocent word. How did that end up in this model? Solar system. Well, the SOL stands for Sol Invictus, one of the most powerful sun gods. Wow. So I'm seeing a pattern here. Everything is starting to have to do with sun gods. Even our day now that they have declared that the day of worship is on Sunday. Nothing too coincidental there. And all of our days of the week are named after these gods. They've interwoven this into the word, and the missions of these programs that were created to deceive us are named after them. The Apollo missions. They even have a little continuous flight technology called Helios. Okay. They know about this stuff. They don't want you to know about it. And I'm going to read you one more thing. This was something the Father said to Ezekiel. It says he brought Ezekiel up between heaven and earth, and he was showing him these things in a vision that upset him. And he went further. He said, here's some abominations, but you're going to see things that upset me even worse. And this was one of those, and I'm going to read it. It says, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 5 and 20 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshiped the sun toward the east. Okay. That upset Father, and that is something that is still going on. And when you move in to even the commandments, right here. You are not to make for yourselves a carved image or any kind of representation of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below the shoreline. And where did he place all the stars and the chief stars and the lights? He placed them in the firmament that he called heaven. That was something that stood out to me shortly after I started looking at this. That's according to the wisdom of this world, but what does our Father say about creation? That's what matters to me, and that's what you can prove to be true if you prove all things. And we'll get into that in just a second. But here's what the Father says. It says, "And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good." He also says that earth is fixed and immovable. It cannot be moved. It's firmly established and movable on its foundations, never to be moved. And on the pillars he has placed the world. Another cool fact, the sun stood still. For Joshua, during the battle, the sun stood still for a whole day. Could you imagine if it was the earth that stopped moving? I think both of the armies would have been wiped out. Tidal waves, or imagine being on a treadmill that's moving faster than that jet and then stopped instantly for a day. That would be quite drastic. So the sun stood still. That's what the Word tells us. But it also tells us something else. One of the first real eye-openers I had was the firmament, the great expanse. Something that took the entire second day of creation for our Father to make, the firmament. Sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, that there's this big expanse above us with lights in it. But the Word says, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. I'm going to show you proof of this in just a second. I know a lot of people say that, well, the firmament's just the atmosphere, and that's kind of how I used to believe when I was in depth with the wisdom of this world, and I would go through the Word. I would think, okay, that's the atmosphere. He spent the entire second day making the atmosphere. But then it says here, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Now, if the firmament was the atmosphere, pilots would have had a much different flight school, navigating stars and whatnot. But he placed them in the firmament, and all of that destroys this notion here. This is false. A lot of people, when they hear about biblical earth people, they picture this. This is a lie. This is a deception as well. We do not believe in a pancake. We don't believe in a sphere or a pancake. The earth has a foundation, and it has a firmament. And I'm going to show you the firmament, video of it, because thanks to the Father, scientists by accident captured it on video. And I'm going to read first, before I show you the video, a prophecy that I had never heard of. This is in the book of Enoch, and the book of Enoch was speaking of a deception to come. And this deception, to me, when I read this, was really eye-opening, because it explains exactly what's happened. It says, "And many chiefs of the stars," and when it says chiefs of the stars, I'm imagining that would be the planets that we now call planets that are named after gods. "And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on earth shall err concerning them." We think they are sons. We're told they're sons. Our sun is another star. It's a kind of puny star. That's what we're told from the wisdom of this world. It's not the greater light. It's just another star. And stars, those are just other suns. Kind of weird. But yeah, they shall err and take them to be gods, and evil shall be multiplied upon them. And like we said earlier, they have been taken to be gods. They're named after other gods. Okay? And also in that same book, it says, "And other things I saw concerning lightning, how some of the stars rise up and become lightning, but cannot lose their form." This sounds ridiculous. I'm reading this book and I'm going, okay, that's ridiculous. Stars, lightning, they're not related. Stars are way up there, lightning's way down here. Okay. Then I had this in memory. The Father brought this to my memory, was a special I watched on something called sprites that originate many, many miles above the clouds. Clouds max out around 14 miles. That's like the world record height. These are closer to 70 and above. Like these are way up there. And scientists were so curious because there was only a few pictures of them, and they happen during these thunderstorms when there is powerful lightning. So they said, we want to get in a plane and go up there and film and see if we can capture these with these high-speed cameras. And what they captured has changed the hearts and minds of a lot of people who were in denial of the firmament. And it's very eye-opening. I'm going to show it to you. If you guys, excuse me, if y'all could dim the lights just a little bit, please, I appreciate it. So they can see the details here.
Hey Josh, just let us know anytime you want it up or down.
Okay, you can leave it down after you do it now. Okay, so just to give you a little chart of what these things look like, you have these sprites and what they call the ionosphere. They have to call it something. And like I said, clouds way down here, about 14 miles. This is about 70 miles up. And what you're going to see when these sprites shoot out, I was showing this to my dad for the first time, and he said, it looks like somebody's just shooting fireworks out of water. I don't know what this is, because he had never seen it before, and I didn't give him any context to what it was. I just said, here, look at this, what do you think? And so, that's what they're going to look like, but you're going to see a wave move across them. And I want you to remember the verses about the waters above and things like that. When you see this footage is really impressive, and scientists had no clue what they were filming. They were just pointing their cameras up. They were in planes above the storm, way above the storm at night, and this is what you're seeing. I'm going to skip past the prophecies for you to save some time. That's the same prophecy I just read to you guys in this recording. The impressive footage is yet to come.
Declassified CIA document. They're checking out the firmament in this one, 1953 now. In the investigations, instruments designed by V.G. Vesenkov were used. One of these was a visual photometer of the daytime sky intended for measuring the brightness of the firmament. And arrived at this now on the assumption of a flat Earth. So the Russians are trying to check out the firmament based on assumptions of a flat Earth in 1957.
Now I've slowed this way down and flipped it upside down so you can see the wave. It kind of looks like a wave in the ocean. You can compare that to waves we see in water here at ground level. And now compare it to a geyser. This is what really just, wow. Not sure if you guys heard about Operation Fishbowl yet. That's where they were sending these nuclear bombs at high altitudes and blowing them up to see what happened. It's a modern day version of the Tower of Babel. But Operation Fishbowl is part of Operation Dominic, which means of the Lord. Literally, fishbowl of the Lord. One of these missiles was named Thor, another one of their false gods. But you can't break it.
I know, we are still not shattered. That highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now.
This is from a commercial, but this is based on a true story of a man, one of the first men to reach the stratosphere, or the stratusplane. And he said the earth looked flat with upturned edges. This was back in 1931 on Gustave Picard. This is a Hennessy commercial. They actually show what looks like the firmament, but this little expanse above. And he breaks through into the waters above. Truth in plain sight. And this is one version of the Bible, the complete Jewish version. It says, God said, let there be a dome in the middle of the water, let it divide the water from the water. I thought that was impressive. But here's what lights look like when you shine them in water. It's hard to tell the difference. Here's footage of a SpaceX rocket launch, and you'll notice a pattern with their flight paths. It's almost like they're afraid of something.
Point Nemo. No, it's not in Antarctica. This spot lies more than 13,000 feet deep in the South Pacific Ocean and is further from land than any other point on Earth. And that's how Point Nemo has become the world's only spacecraft graveyard.
I wonder if that's why they named the cartoon Finding Nemo. So this is a rocket, an amateur rocket launch that didn't follow that flight path, the rainbow flight path. Same height as the sprites. It ran into gravity. But watch this. You can ask Brother Lucas, an astronomer. They see the sun, and it looks pretty big. But they also see the moon, which was supposed to be over Australia. This was launched in a desert here in America. Circles around, and there's the moon over Australia. And you wonder why they censor this topic. I'm going to stop it there for the sake of time. My goal is to show you the firmament, the Father's handiwork, and like I said, when I was asking that dangerous question, I want you to show me the truth about creation, and it give glory to you. And that was one of those things he showed to me that blew me away, and I was like, I have to share this with everybody. People are going to think I'm crazy, but becoming a fool to this world is sometimes what we have to become, or all the time, what we have to become. But there's your typical flight path as you saw in the video. They have to go that way for a reason, because the ones higher up, not every scientist, I don't go around saying every scientist is a liar. It's not like that at all. There's so many smart people in the world doing science, thinking they are doing one thing, but when you get to the highest levels, they know exactly what they're looking out for, and they cannot show you uncut rocket footage for longer than a couple minutes. That's one thing that kind of devastated me when I was like, this should be easy to disprove. Let me find 20 minutes of uncut rocket footage, and you can only find 2 minutes or so, something like that. And amateur balloon people are sending up balloons for hours and sending you the footage. But you would wonder if that was there, somebody would have detected that by now. And sure enough, people have detected it. And these scientists detected it, and NASA had an immediate cover story. The reason, first of all, why we haven't been back to the moon in a long time, in decades, is because of what they call the Van Allen belts. These are deadly. When one of the astronauts was asked, why didn't they affect you on the mission? What did y'all do? They said, well, they didn't affect us because they haven't been discovered yet. That was his words, not mine. So they were safe. They were safe because the Van Allen belts that are deadly to modern day astronauts hadn't been discovered. But when these scientists detected, they said, this is like a science fiction force field barrier above us. We're detecting it. What is it? It's impenetrable, they said. And NASA says, oh, yeah, our Van Allen belt probes, they spotted that, saw it. It's just a man-made bubble surrounding Earth. So they have these cover stories conveniently tucked away, they pull out, and people go, okay, I saw it in a science magazine or on NASA.gov. Has to be true. Why haven't we gone there? If there's a firmament, there's no edge, why has no one gone there and taken pictures of this thing? That's a great question. Because since, or throughout the Cold War, and every war and conflict since, all these nations are happily holding hands, smiling, and protecting this area. The 60th parallel would look like this on a globe map, but it would look more like this on an azimuthal equidistant map, kind of like the UN map, the United Nations logo, their little map. It would look more like that. And previous explorers, Captain Cook, I didn't learn about him. All I learned about was Christopher Columbus proving the Earth was round. I never heard that a man named Captain Cook went around trying to go around this continent here and went 60,000 plus miles for years and never found a way in. Exactly as it should be. What do they tell us? Why are all these countries only smiling on TV in front of cameras and getting along when it comes to certain things like space travel or exploring ice? They've been studying ice for decades. What do we have to show for it? Nothing. Okay? But they tell us that we're going to study ice, we're going to be peaceful, and everyone's just going to not be able to come here. But you can go there. It's just going to cost you a little over $40,000. Anybody want to pay for my ticket? $40,000 for one trip, one person, and you can only go where they tell you to go, and their little tourist stops. That's it. No private exploration is allowed there. But here is a map from not long after Mr. Columbus proved that we didn't fall off the edge and it was a sphere. This is a map from a little bit after that, 1587. This is impressive, I thought. If you compare it to today's or modern time area age maps of the world, very similar. That's what they look like. Kind of like the azimuthal equidistant maps. But that is just a small part of the deceptions. There is so much that goes into this, and I have years worth of stuff that I was going to try to put into this one little presentation. But here's some documents. I know you guys are probably falling asleep after lunch, so I'm going to get into some more interesting stuff here in just a sec. But here's some documents. When you start digging, you find out that the CIA and NASA, and actually NASA is a branch of the CIA. I didn't know that until recently either. But the terms flat earth, which I mean just dry land. Water is technically flat. Dry land has many different elevation changes. But it's mentioned throughout these documents. Even NASA, when they're computing things, say they compute it based on a flat, non-rotating earth. Why would you compute it based on something that doesn't exist? Because it does exist. You have to compute it that way because it does exist. Even Russia, who was ahead of us in the space race, was saying the shape of the Earth wasn't known. They just didn't know it. Not at all. More documents of the firmament. You can go through these if you're obsessed like I was when I was going through all this stuff. I don't recommend it. It's truth. The Father will prove it if you prove all things. But one of my favorite proofs is looking back at the flood. When you guys think of the flood, is this kind of the images you get in your mind? The ark, the waters, they're dropping. There's this ark that's going to rest on these mountains. That's sort of the typical image I had. The fountains of the deep. And then you hear about the windows of heaven. When I was looking into the lost books, I found one that said that there were 7 fountains of the deep, and that there were 7 windows of heaven opened up. And when you look back at the word window, it's a different word used there than the actual word window on the ark. On the ark, it's just a hole in the wall. Window of heaven, it's more like a chimney or a sluice for water to go through. The windows of heaven and the fountains of the deep. He has the earth divided into 7 parts. So that's why he needed 7 floodgates to flood the earth equally. Never did I ever picture that. Did anybody ever picture that? I never did. It didn't dawn on me until recently. I have never analyzed what I believe in with this model to even imagine this. Never. They sold us this reality of this model, but I never pictured a flood and then this happening. And where did that water come from, and where did it go? Because below our feet is nothing but hard rock, and then it turns into lava. There were no fountains of the deep in this model. And it's like it's got a giant bar magnet shoved through it, the north and then south. Cool thing about magnets is when you superheat a magnet, it does not work. Explain that. Can't. They don't tell you that. You find out on YouTube that somebody did an experiment with magnets and proved it. Magnets, when you get them hot, no longer work. But we have our magnetic field as if there's a giant bar magnet through our magma ball Earth. So, interesting stuff when you try to prove all things. Here is reality. Water is level and it's flat, and it's provably so. So, what proofs do we have of this reality that water doesn't curve? Because we've seen boats go over that curve, right? We have a lot of proofs. There is some things that you should not be able to see, and the better zoom cameras we have, more so than the ones of our ancestors, the more we can prove this. The world record, or previous world record long distance photo, had 3/4 of a mile of curve that just forgot to show up that day. 3/4 of a mile of curve. And that's not factoring in the vanishing point of perspective with distant objects looking smaller than the mirror objects. Like I could kind of hide you guys with just one finger from here, but most of you are bigger than me, taller than me. There's a lot of perspective issues there. Closer up, we have things like this where you can do math. If you're math, some people are way better at math. My wife is a human calculator. She can calculate stuff really fast. I have to go to websites to do the math or have fancy calculators. But there is an Earth curvature that should be measurable based on the heliocentric model. It should be measurable. 0.666 feet squared per mile. Or 8 inches per mile squared. Or, I'm sorry, 0.666 of a foot, not 0.666 inches. But the horizon is way further, many miles further than it should be. The invention of lasers has really done a lot to cut through the lies. They have lasers that can now cut through decades and centuries of lies. These people went out, and this is recent. This is a recent one here that I included. 16.5 miles of flat water. That's what it looks like. This is in Canada, I believe. And then you have scientists telling us that humpback whales' song can be heard up to 4,000 miles away as long as they don't go behind these little ridges. Okay, you got a humpback whale, 495 miles worth of curve. Doesn't impact their song, but if you look at the bottom of the ocean, these little ridge lines right here, these are what we're told impact their ability to communicate. These ridges are more powerful than 495 miles of curve. That's hard for me to believe, guys. And then you have a guy with a weird name, Googly Elmo Marconi. Sounds like a cartoon character name, but this guy was a genius. And he did something that physicists were saying, don't even try it, it will not work, the curve will get in the way. You're going to try to send a line of sight radio signal. Line of sight meaning it only goes in a straight line. You're going to try to send it over a curve, 2,100 miles, you're done. He said, I'm just going to crank the power up, it's going to work. He did. He cranked the power up and it worked. 2,100 miles of flat water. Boom. Signal made it across the Atlantic in 1901. Proving the Father's word was true. The earth is not moving. But if you really like to prove all things, which you should, you can go outside like Yeshua did. He went outside, he spent time with the Father, he prayed to him, he made it a priority. That's what he wants us to do, is to make time with him a priority so that we live. Not so that when we mess up, he can punish us, but so that we don't die. He makes these rules for us, and that's one thing he taught me when he healed me, was that I was hurting, not because he wanted to punish me, but because the world was punishing me. And it's kind of like you tell your kid, hey, look both ways before you cross the road. And then you have that kid who's just energetic and they run, and if they get ran over, do you want to punish them for getting ran over? You want to pick them up, right? Oh my gosh, you disobeyed, you're hurt, the world is killing you. That's what my father did to me. Okay, but back to these stars, if you want to prove all things. I get emotional thinking about that night. The stars, one of the first things I did was I was like, well, I'm going to be spending a lot of time outside praying now that you're showing me all this stuff. I can look at the stars. Every 6 months, I should be on the other side of the sun. And if I'm looking at the stars and that's what it looks like, I might reinvestigate that model and think, maybe I'm being deceived by some of the stuff. Even though I knew the Holy Spirit was telling me what was true, you still, it's good to prove it and learn how to prove it, and you don't match that reality when you try to prove it. Even looking back at our beloved blue marbles, they don't match reality. Actual daylight maps of Earth destroy them. Also, further inspection. If you were fans of the Apollo missions, this was heartbreaking because me as a kid, I love these things. Most of us love it. The world designed these things to be lovable, for us to take pride. We're Americans. We did it first. We did it better. Then you go back and analyze it, and it's pretty impressive. Even the deception is kind of impressive. When I first found out how deceived I was, I wanted to just sit there and give an applause like, you guys did a good job. You had me buying this with line and sinker. This is a picture of Earth that was taken through a round window with an insert. And there's film of them doing that. That film wasn't released until later. Somehow it made it into our hands. And you can see them taking out the insert and setting up this picture. And the camera that they said was in the window was actually further from the window, almost like they were in an airplane looking at clouds. And that's why when they adjusted the levels on the picture here, a little box would appear around the moon or around the Earth, because they did not use computers to cut and paste. They literally had someone take this, cut it, and then stick it into the background. There's not videos of them zooming in on the Earth from the moon for that reason. They couldn't just take that picture and stick it there, and they couldn't fake the stars. I wish I would have thought to give you guys a look at the first time we ever saw stars from space. If you have not seen that, I suggest you go to our channel and check that out. It's hilarious. It looks like a light bright, like a kid's light bright set when they were trying to fake the stars. This is the before NASA era when they did that, up in a big balloon. It was laughable. You also see them putting their wisdom in the clouds, kind of like Disney does. And I always thought, man, these artists that are getting paid more than we do to draw pictures of clouds with 6th grade humor, I don't understand that, but it could be more sinister. Somebody pointed this out to me the other day. The Greek number converter pulls up a word that looks a lot like that if you rearrange it backwards, and the enemy likes to hide things in reverse, like a backmasking with songs and whatnot. But they're also really good at just hitting copy and paste. If you have any artists in here, which I'm sure we do, that's kind of the lazy way to do it. These pictures that we looked at and I thought were real, I could go in any science classroom in my school except for mine and find these pictures. And the people that look at them think they're real. And it's heartbreaking because I love these people and I love the children they teach. And it's hard to know that this stuff is carried on as fact, and it goes against what my Father tells us. Now, a lot of people say, why would you keep focusing on this? There are more important issues. And this isn't the only issue I focus on. This is not my religion. This is a part of the Word. It's at the very beginning of the Bible because it's important to understand what we live on. If we don't know what we live on, it's hard to know who we really are, and we can be deceived later on by whatever deceptions they throw at us that involve this model. And from what I'm gathering, there are some deceptions coming that are far greater than this innocent-looking blue marble that I thought was so innocent and lovable. Okay, I really did. I thought it was innocent. I thought, why would they lie? And that's why none of us looked into it. It's so innocent. Why? Why on earth would they lie? But here are some testimonies I want to share with you real quick. These are from some just random comments I gathered before I came here. And one of them says, "Flat Earth changed me from atheist to a Bible-loving, God-fearing human being. I'm born again in the name of Yahushua, Jesus of Nazareth." And this person said about the same thing. 43 years atheist and agnostic, the Flat Earth led me to the firmament and the Bible. But the one that I found here, I'm sorry it's a little blurry, it's from an old screenshot, and I luckily tracked it down. It says, "I've been a heroin addict close to a decade now. The Bible seemed like a book of silly children's stories made up and used by the church to control people. Needless to say, drugs have been the center of my world, so much so, I've never taken much time to get any deeper than that when it comes to God. I've been watching these videos for about a week with my boyfriend. After watching this one, we just sat quietly for a moment, and this was, I believe, the firmament video, if I'm remembering this correctly. We just sat quiet for a moment and then looked at each other in amazement. The Bible is real in its literal translation, and there is a great deceit behind everything we've been taught. I'm going to get myself a Bible soon and research the book of Enoch as well. Please pray for us." This brought me to tears. I want you guys to thank you. It is a powerful truth. It's not the only truth, but it's a powerful truth. It proves the Father's handiwork.
Yes.
Like the book of Psalms says, the firmament shows the Father's handiwork. It shows that. You can look at it. It's a calendar for signs and for seasons. That's what it is. That's what he tells us it is. He set the stars in the firmament. Okay? Now, the alien deception, I was talking about them having other deceptions. There was all sorts of talks of alien deceptions and stuff when I was first looking into this, what they call the conspiracy theories, because there was a guy that used to work at NASA who passed away. Before he died, he said, they're planning some deceptions, these evil people. He sort of became a Christian right before he died. He was a Nazi scientist, if you've ever heard of Werner von Braun. And before he died, he said, they're going to carry out this plan to weaponize space, which it's all a lie, but the goal is to control us. Kind of like they're controlling us all now with fear and hate. We've seen that on a new level in the past months. How controlled we really are, you want to know? Look at the fear in people's eyes. It's heartbreaking. We are controlled so easily by what they tell us. And this guy said they have a narrative and a plan, and it's going to involve certain things. All those things he said before he died have come true. The Space Force, the fake Space Force, the weaponization of space. They don't have to have something up there, lasers pointed down at us or anything. They could blow something up like we just saw that big explosion the other day and say, guys, that was from space. We're all doomed if we don't obey, you know. It's all based on lies, and he said the last card is this alien card, and he laughed about it. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But you listen to what the Bible says. It says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Preparing for a war. Deceiving the kings. So many times we've been deceived by false doctrines, by these liars and these deceivers. And that brings me to a little warning that I found when I was translating. I was bored, and I was on a lunch break at work, and I just started copying. I pulled up a Hebrew translation just to see what would happen. And I found some really cool stuff when I translated it back into English. And this verse is no different. This is in 1 John. Yours will read a little different. This is from Hebrew, and I took it and translated it into English. And it says, I wrote these things to warn you against the haters of Christ. They will do anything to dazzle your eyes, distort the truth, and deceive you. But God has prepared in you the Holy Spirit that teaches you the truth only. And that is why you do not need another teacher to show you. Like the brothers and people up here were saying earlier. We don't need another teacher. We have our Father. When we seek and ask Him to show us the truth, be careful. He will show you the truth. And like I said, being careful, I asked Father to take me out of my comfort zone because I'm very comfortable sitting behind a computer so I can hit edit and undo when I mess up. And Brother Lucas sent me an email like the next day and said, hey, would you like to speak at a conference? I said, I did ask for that. And so I thank him and his family and all you guys that helped put this together. But I want you to know that the Father's truth is true. Prove all things. That is one of the things I want you to take away from this. But also, most importantly, is that, let's scroll back to the very beginning. That one truth that swiped me off of my feet is that His mercy endures forever. And when I say it knocks me off my feet, I remember being down on the pavement. That was one of my last memories prior to my healing. The next second, I remember I'm standing. I'm standing and I'm looking up. And I could not feel my feet on the ground. I had to look down. I thought, Father's picking me up. I'm floating. And I looked down, and my feet were still on the ground. I couldn't believe it. I still don't know to this day. I mean, I know how I got to my feet, but I don't remember doing it myself. And it's a love that's being hidden. And the spirit of the Antichrist, we're told, is to deny the Father and the Son. It was around back then. The Bible tells us that. If you destroy this creation model and take that away, you can easily eliminate the Father. And without the Father, there's no sending of the Son and that grace that we all don't deserve. So I'm going to cut this short. I know this is a little shorter than I anticipated. I thought it would go a little longer. But if you guys ever have any questions about anything, I will give you my email. This stuff is a lot to take in. Sometimes people look at this and they go, it's just not for me. I don't want to look into it. That's fine. If you don't have to look into this. Like I said, a lot of people say it's not a salvation issue. From what I've seen, it does lead people to the Father, so in ways it is. And miracles happened to me before I believed any of this. The Father healed me before I believed this. Those healings led me to this, and have led me here today. But the truth is true, no matter how many people believe it. And I invite all of you to become a fool to this world, because this wisdom is foolishness with our Father. Thank you, guys.